This is Ken Dickey again, doing things with Cuis Smalltalk. And uh, I realized last time I said some things in words and I probably should have shown a bit more. And that has to do with layouts and just exploring a bit. So, for example, there's this uh, area here that's fairly complex if you look at it. Okay. Well, a fun thing to do is actually just sort of pull it out where we can see it and get a layout editor. And now that you've seen how this thing gets laid out, you can figure out how all this is put together. We have three rows. Each of these rows has two columns and so forth. Row and column, very nice. And so, if I click on row, for example, right now we have everything arranged this way, and we say update. And now we have, you see, we've got a column here, and and so forth. So, being able to play with layouts and layout specs, and you can see how these things are put together, and you can change to right panning and do an update and those sorts of things. That's not going to show you much interest in this particular morph, but we can play around and do some interesting things. Anyway, so I just wanted to say that you can destructure these things and play around with layouts and layout specs and that kind of stuff to figure out how all this stuff works together. And now I promised I would get to baby steps. I have a Cuis Smalltalk baby steps where I am just trying various things out, and I'm my wacky guy. I try all kinds of different things out. And let's take a look at morph meta properties, which is really going to be more about the event system and creative uses of some things. So, as usual, we're going to load something like MorphIt, which is, I better spell that properly. MorphIt, I think that's it. And we'll say do it. And yeah, okay. So we got value holders and animators and various things. And I'm not worried about saving that text. And now I can open a morph modifier palette. And let's say we'll take a look at this thing. And I'm going to open a drop target for that. And let's say, follow a path. I'll just drop that there. And if I come up here and click, now you see it's going to do a little dance. So it's following a prearranged path. Okay. And if I want to, I can do maybe like grow and shrink. And now if I click on it, I get this behavior. Okay, so this is half-baked or quarter-baked, just some ideas while I'm playing with. But I thought you might like to see how this kind of stuff might be threaded together and how to do these sorts of things for yourself. And because you might want a palette of behaviors to try to do things with. Okay, so if we actually take a look inside of one of these, we can, let's say, debug, browse morph class. Let's see if that doesn't do it for us. Yeah, here we are, user action morph. Okay, so there's a user action morph, and if we look at the class side, we've got various examples for color cycling and so forth. And here we've got grow shrink example. Okay. And so what grow shrink does is it uses an animator, and it has an icon, and when it's added to a target morph, then it goes ahead and sets up an animator with a grow shrink action with so many steps and a step time, 100 milliseconds. And it adds a handler that if it's true, we start stepping, and if it's false, we stop stepping. And this add handler is really adding a handler for the basically a mouse click, a mouse button up with a position to that particular morph. And so if we now look at this morph, oops, let me move this out of the way, and we come here and we do an explorer on this morph. All right. We find that before properties was nil, and now we have some added properties that are idiosyncratic to this particular morph. So there's properties that an morph instance has, any morph of this class has, and there's properties which are which can be added, which is idiosyncratic to any one particular morph versus another. So we can have a whole bunch of rectangle-like morphs, but they don't all do this at the same time, which is nice. So in this case, it has a handles mouse down handler, and I guess I should just show the mechanics behind that. Okay, and actually what I want to do here is look at an implementer. So morph handles mouse down. So what it does is, this is the default behavior since it's to morph, and either it's been overwritten, like a one-line editor morph says, yeah, I always handle the mouse down, or it hasn't been overridden, but you can add a handles mouse down property to that individual morph, and that says, oh yeah, he's got that property set, it's okay. So that's one way of adding a dynamic behavior and allowing these things to happen. And then there's the actual mouse button up local position, same thing. We didn't add something to all morphs of this class, but just for this particular morph, and it's user action class grow shrink example. So you see it's the grow shrink example we're actually executing as a closure in this context, and so it remembers all that good stuff. And so I guess we just need to take a quick look at animator. So the idea is you've got a property list. You can add and remove properties from the property list. Some of those properties have to do with mouse clicks and whatnot and behaviors, and they can add a behavior to one specific instance, not all instances in a class. So being able to do things idiosyncratically, that's, you know, one thing at a time is good. So now let's go ahead and I want to browse animators briefly, and take a look at the class comment. Animators has some actor, the morph acted upon, something that which one does, a closure that just gets called with the actor as the argument every time a timer goes off, and a one argument closure which again takes the actor, which is the one that knows what's going on, and answers, hey, am I done yet? Okay, and in some cases you always answer false, and that's easy to do, because you just go on forever. In other cases you say, oh, this user event happened, or something external happened, and we don't have to do what we're doing anymore. And so that again is using the event system to connect things, and having an action which, let's see, I think we might have, here we are, grow shrink example. Okay. Again, this does an animated grow shrink action 20, number step 6, step time 100 milliseconds. So we can, this is an example, so if I hit do it here, you can see it's just a bunch of code there. And so that's what's happening here, and this animated grow shrink is the next one here. And so what this does is it basically ping pongs back and forth. It just has a count that increases the count. It wants to be centered, so it's not just growing off one size, and so it does a little calculation about that. And if the count is greater than the number of steps, then growing is false, and then it counts down, and then if the count is less than 1, then growing is true, and it just cycles back and forth between these two positions. And when we get tired of looking at that, we can just do it, and the animator stops stepping. Okay, so that's actually, so you can look around here at various things, but that's basically the basic idea is that we can take one of these things, drop it on a drop target. The drop target is the affordance that knows how to operate, take a drop action and operate on a particular instance here. And so that acts as the mediator, because I can't immediately interact. This morph, some random morph code, just has no idea that I may be wanting to do some operation on it. So having a construction lens as an intermediary allows me to see what's going on and have some idea that, or view something that's internal. See, these two buttons are still there. View something that's internal to this particular morph, and have an intermediary that I can interact with to make it do something fun. And so here we've got, we can do arbitrary things. And so again, once again, I invite you to, take a look at the code, play around, and try different things out with the user interface. There's all kinds of fun and creative things one can do with this kind of stuff. And as I am a visual thinker who sort of does the algorithmics from time to time, as opposed to somebody who's deep into algorithms, and I type a lot, and the user interface is an afterthought. This is the way I tend to prefer to interact. And so anyway, however you are, and however you go forward and think about these things, hopefully Cuis Smalltalk will support you and strike some ideas, and you can take a look around at the projects that are out there, at the particular things that we've got all kinds of. If you go to GitHub and have it search on Cuis Smalltalk, you'll find that there are a number of repositories out there that people have done all kinds of interesting and fun things you might be interested in. And so that's it for this series. Hope to see you around. Take care and have fun.